most lethal and destructive bomber, the B-52J, just got tested and is ready to be deployed. The U.S. is getting prepared for a secret mission and is preparing its most destructive military arsenals for that purpose. This long-range strategic bomber is designed with the ability to fly for a long period of time and drop free-fall bombs or even launch cruise missiles with a shocking precision. The B-52J, the successor of the B-36, is a technological marvel that has earned the fear of other nations. What's the significant difference between the B-52J and the B-36? What secret mission is the U.S. preparing for? Join us as we explore the destructive capabilities of the new B-52J bomber that the U.S. is preparing for its secret mission. Russia indeed has a reason to be scared if the United States plans to deploy the extremely lethal and destructive B-52J to its region, and here's why. The Boeing B-52, also known as Stratofortress, is a big American bomber that can fly for a long time without going too fast. Boeing designed it and still helps keep it running and updated. In addition to its unique capabilities, it can carry a lot of bombs, up to 70,000 pounds, and can fly about 8,800 miles without needing more fuel while flying. Simply amazing. Since winning the contract bid in June 1962, the B-52 design changed a lot. This bomber started with 6 turboprop engines and a straight wing, but ended up with 8 turbojet engines and swept-back wings in the final prototype YB-52. It had its very first flight in April 1952, and since then it has been used by the Air Force since 1955 and by NASA from 1959 to 2007. It was made to carry nuclear weapons during the Cold War and replaced the Convair B-36 Peacemaker. Even though newer, faster bombers like the Convair B-58 Hustler and the North American XB-70 were developed, the B-52 stayed in use because it was good at flying fast and didn't cost too much to operate. It has been used in many wars, but it has only dropped regular bombs, not nuclear ones. Its predecessor, the B-30-36, was the very first bomber that could carry any nuclear bomb in the United States arsenal without needing changes. It could also fly up to 10,000 miles and carry a maximum load of 87,200 pounds without refueling. This bomber, also known as the Peacemaker, was a large bomber used by the United States Air Force from 1942 to 1959. It is the biggest piston engine plane ever made and has the widest wingspan of any combat plane at 233. It became operational in 1948 and was the main nuclear bomber for Strategic Air Command until the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, a jet-powered plane, replaced it in 1955. Almost all B-36 planes have been destroyed, with only 4 remaining. Also, it was a huge aircraft, much larger than its predecessor and even its successor, which came before it. Its wingspan and tail height were bigger than the Soviet Antonov An-22 from the 1960s, which was the largest turboprop aircraft at that time. It wasn't until the Boeing 747 and Lockheed C-5 Galaxy were designed in the 1960s that American planes could carry heavier loads. The B-36 wings were very large, even bigger than those of the C-5 Galaxy, allowing it to carry enough fuel for long flights without refueling. The wings were thick enough to have a crawl space for engine access. It could fly at high altitudes, over 40,000 feet, beyond the reach of 1940s-era fighters. In 1956, non-essential equipment was removed to make the bomber lighter, allowing it to reach speeds of 423 miles per hour and cruise at 50,000 feet, with the ability to dash at over 55,000 feet. This bomber had large wings and 4 jet engines added to its piston engines in later versions. This made it more maneuverable at high altitudes, even more so than United States Air Force jet interceptors at the time, which often stalled above 40,000 feet. However, the United States Navy claimed their McDonnell F-2H Banshee could intercept the B-36 at over 50,000 feet. This claim was not confirmed because the United States Air Force refused to test between the Banshee and the B-36, and the new Secretary of Defense, Louis A. Johnson, who favored the USAF, also stopped the test. Moving on to its engines, the B-36 propulsion system was unique, with 6 28-cylinder radial engines in a pusher configuration, rather than the usual tractor layout. Early models had 18,000 horsepower, later increased to 22,800 horsepower. Each engine drove a large 19-foot propeller, the second largest ever used on a piston aircraft. This setup avoided turbulence over the wings, but could cause engine overheating and fires. The slow-turning propellers created a distinct low-frequency sound that could be heard from the ground. As the successor of this formidable bomber, the B-52J is even better and a more lethal strategic bomber. However, it has a lot in common with the earlier B-47 Stratojet bomber. Both planes had similar designs, like swept wings and jet engines mounted in pods. The crew could eject from the plane if needed. On the B-52D, the pilots and ECM operator ejected upwards, while the lower deck crew ejected downwards. Until the B-52G model, the gunner had to get rid of the tail gun to escape. In early B-52 models, the tail gunner was located at the back of the plane and used both visual and radar systems. In later models, the gunner was moved to the front and the radar handled the aiming, similar to the B-58 Hustlers system. Flying the B-52 at low altitudes caused the aircraft's structure to wear out 8 times faster than flying at high altitudes, leading to expensive repairs to keep them in service. In the early 1960s, a 3-phase high-stress program was started to address this issue, enrolling planes with 2,000 flight hours. Later programs, like a 2,000-hour service life extension in the late 1960s and the Pacer plank reskinning in 1977, followed. The G and H models had wet wings that wore out 60% faster, so they were modified in 1964. Additional modifications included fuselage and wing replacements in the mid-1960s and the Stability Augmentation and Flight Control Program in 1967. Fuel leaks due to failing Marmon clamps were a recurring problem, so various programs like Blue Band, Hard Shell, and Quick Clip in the late 1950s added safety straps to prevent major fuel loss. Also, the B-52 can officially fly up to 50,000 feet, but it typically flies at 43,000 feet on combat missions for better range. In September 2006, the B-52 became one of the first U.S. military planes to use alternative fuel. It took off from Edwards Air Force Base with a mix of 50% synthetic fuel made by the Fischer-Tropsch process and 50% regular JP-8 jet fuel, burning this mix in 2 of its 8 engines. On December 15, 2006, a B-52 flew with the synthetic fuel powering all 8 engines for the first time. The 7-hour flight was successful. This was part of the Department of Defense's Assured Fuel Initiative, aiming to cut down on crude oil use and get half of its aviation fuel from alternative sources by 2016. On August 8, 2007, the U.S. Air Force Secretary Michael Wynne certified that the B-52H was fully approved to use the synthetic fuel blend. Due to the B-52's mission requirements, it only needs to perform modest maneuvers and doesn't require spin recovery. The plane has a small, narrow rudder, so it has a limited yaw control. Initially, an all-moving vertical stabilizer was planned, but it was dropped due to concerns about hydraulic reliability. With 8 engines, the impact of losing one engine in flight is minimal and can be corrected with the narrow rudder. For crosswind takeoffs and landings, the main landing gear can pivot 20 degrees to either side. The crew sets the yaw-adjustable landing gear based on wind observations made on the ground. The B-52's elevator, like the rudder, is also narrow, which limits its control. For long-term pitch adjustments and changes in airspeed, the aircraft uses an all-moving tail or stabilator, with the elevator making small adjustments within the stabilator's setting. The stabilator can move up to 13 degrees, which is 9 up, 4 down, and is important during takeoff and landing due to the significant pitch changes caused by using the flaps. The B-52's variants made before the G models had very small ailerons with a short span, about the same length as their width. These feeler ailerons gave feedback to the pilot and helped fine-tune roll during precise maneuvers like aerial refueling. Due to the thin main wing's tendency to twist, traditional ailerons couldn't be used effectively because they would cause the wing to twist and reduce roll control. Instead, 6 spoilerons on each wing handled most of the roll control. The late B-52G models removed the ailerons entirely and added an extra spoileron to each wing. Without ailerons, the B-52G and H models were more prone to Dutch roll. The Jollywell program, which was concluded in 1964, fixed ongoing problems with the avionics systems by improving parts of the AN/ASQ-38 bombing navigation computer and the terrain computer. By 1965, most aircraft received the Madrick upgrade, which could detect failures in the avionics and weapons computer systems, crucial for monitoring the AGM-28 Hound Dog missiles. The B-52's electronic countermeasures were enhanced with the Rivet Rambler program in 1971 and Rivet Ace in 1973. To improve low-altitude operations, the LEN/ASQ-151 electro-optical viewing system was added to B-52Gs and Hs between 1972 and 1976. This system included a low-light level television and a forward-looking infrared system mounted under the nose. In the 1980s, the B-52's navigation capabilities were further enhanced with GPS. The main computer for the B-52 was the IBM AP-101, which was also used on the Rockwell B-1 Lancer bomber and the Space Shuttle. In 2007, the B-52 was equipped with the Lightning targeting pod, enhancing its ability to attack ground targets with various standoff weapons. This pod uses laser guidance, a high-resolution forward-looking infrared sensor, and a CCD camera to capture target images. Lightning pods are also used on other U.S. aircraft like the F/A-18 Hornet, F-16 Fighting Falcon, and AV-8B Harrier II. Starting in 1947, the B-52G and H models were modified to carry up to 20 AGM-69 SRAM nuclear missiles. To further enhance its offensive capabilities, air-launched cruise missiles were added. After testing the Boeing AGM-86 and General Dynamics AGM-109 Tomahawk, the AGM-86B was chosen for the B-52 and later the B-1 Lancer. A total of 194 B-52Gs and Hs were modified to carry 12 AGM-86 missiles on underwing pylons, with 82 B-52Hs further modified to carry another 8 missiles on a rotary launcher in the bomb bay. To meet SALT II treaty requirements, cruise missile-armed B-52Gs got a distinctive wing route fairing for easy identification by reconnaissance satellites, while B-52Hs didn't need visual changes. In 1990, the stealthy AGM-129 ACM cruise missile entered service, intended to replace the AGM-86, but only 450 were produced due to high costs in the Cold War's end, with no conventional version made. The B-52 was also supposed to use the AGM-137 TSSAM missile, but this was canceled due to development costs. The B-52Gs that were not converted to carry cruise missiles were upgraded for better conventional bombing. They got a new integrated conventional stores management system and new underwing pylons for larger bombs or other equipment. 30 B-52Gs were modified to carry up to 12 AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles each, and 12 B-52Gs were fitted to carry AGM-142 Havnap air-to-ground missiles. When the B-52G was retired in 1994, a quick program called Rapid 8 modified 4 aircraft to carry Harpoon missiles and 4 to carry Havnap missiles to temporarily restore these capabilities. The Conventional Enhancement Modification Program upgraded the B-52H to improve its conventional weapons capability. It added the modified underwing weapon pylons from conventional armed B-52Gs, allowing it to carry Harpoon and Havnap missiles, as well as new generation weapons like JDAM, wind-corrected munitions dispenser bombs, AGM-154 glide bombs, and AGM-158 JSSM missiles. The CEM program also introduced new radios, integrated GPS into the navigation system, and replaced the undernose FE Lyre with a modern unit. By 1996, 47 B-52Hs were upgraded under the Conventional Enhancement Modification Program, with an additional 19 upgraded by the end of 1999. By around 2010, the United States Strategic Command stopped using B-61 and B-83 nuclear bombs on B-52 bombers, listing only the B-2 for delivering strategic nuclear bombs in budget requests. The B-52 could no longer evade modern air defenses, so it shifted to using nuclear cruise missiles and focusing on conventional attacks. The 2019 manual confirmed the removal of these nuclear bombs from the B-52's weapons list. That's not all. As important as the removal of unimportant parts of the bomber is, the addition of things that would make it even better and more formidable is expected, and the United States has recently spent a lot of money on this as well. This massive and expensive upgrade includes changing the engines to something even more powerful. The new engines for this bomber have been expected for a while, and now it's here. Boeing, the mastermind behind the development of the B-52, has been looking into changing the old engines made by Pratt & Whitney TF-33 since the 1970s. At first, the Air Force said no to this idea because they thought it would be extremely expensive. But they eventually changed their minds, partly because they did not consider how much fuel costs would go up. Boeing and Rolls-Royce used modern digital tools to figure out how to put the engines in the old warplanes. Rolls-Royce made digital maps of the big bombers, which helped engineers put models of the new engines to see how they would work with other parts and systems. They also shared digital models to help engineers make sure the new engines fit perfectly and decide where to put new parts. Starting in 2016, Boeing began upgrading the internal rotary launchers to carry smart bombs inside the B-52, which previously were carried only on the wings. While the B-1 Lancer can theoretically carry more weight, the B-52 with the upgraded launcher can carry more of certain smart bombs. Future weapons for the B-52 include the AGM-183A hypersonic missile and the long-range standoff nuclear-armed cruise missile. The B-52 has 8 engines arranged in pairs on 4 pylons under the wings. Early models used various Pratt & Whitney engines, with later models using more powerful versions. In the mid-1970s, Boeing considered replacing the engines, but didn't go forward with the plan. In 1996, Rolls-Royce and Boeing proposed replacing the 8 engines with 4 more powerful ones, but this was deemed too costly. In 2020, the United States Air Force requested new engines for the B-52, and the company, Rolls-Royce, was selected in 2021 to provide 650 engines for the bombers. Unlike earlier plans to reduce the number of engines from 8 to 4, the new engines will maintain the 8-engine configuration, and these upgraded B-52s would be called the B-52Js. In 2021, Rolls-Royce was awarded the $2.6 billion SERP contract to finally replace the aging engines. The United States Air Force started testing these reliable and fuel-efficient engines at NASA's Stennis Space Center. Based on the Rolls-Royce BR family, the F-130 engines will keep the B-52 flying into the 2040s. Also, the engines will be made in Indianapolis, with the first upgraded bombers entering service later this decade. Despite the uniqueness of its predecessor and the fact that it was used by not only the United States Air Force, but also NASA, the B-52 Stratofortress is considered the best long-range strategic bomber. Despite the development of newer and even more advanced aircraft, the B-52 remains the best to be ever created, and this is why it might remain in service for decades to come. After announcing the upgrades made to this formidable bomber, it is finally getting tested for a secret mission. In March 2023, the United States Air Force started testing the Rolls-Royce F-130 engines that was chosen in 2021 to replace the old ones as part of the Stratofortress modernization. Also, this testing process is taking place at NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. This replacement engine, the F-130, originates from the Rolls-Royce BR family of commercial engines used in various aircraft worldwide. These engines have over 30 million hours of operation and are known for being reliable and fuel efficient. Each B-52 uses 8 engines in 4 pods. Seeing how powerful these engines are, over 600 engines will be delivered to the United States Air Force, keeping the bombers flying into the 2040s and beyond. Rolls-Royce North America will produce the engines in Indianapolis, Indiana. As for the secret mission that the United States is preparing for, information concerning it is undisclosed, but with the recent geopolitical tensions that has been on the rise, it's only normal to think that the U.S. plans to restore order in these troubled regions. For instance, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia has been ongoing for a very long time with almost no end in sight. Lots of Ukrainians are living in broken homes or in buildings that aren't good enough to protect them from very cold weather that could be dangerous. As the war goes on, more and more people need help. Around 14.16 million people in Ukraine are expected to need humanitarian aid in 2024. And if the war continues, it would only get worse. Restoring world peace should be the order of the day, and the United States is in the best position to do this. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.